our humanity.
And we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bullish Bitcoin channel. I am Brian, the UKBitcoinMaster. Thanks for joining me. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're tuning in from around the world. Today is the 23rd of June, 2022. You know the name of the game of this channel, Strong Bitcoin Hand. Build that diamond hand, people. I am massively excited. Got an awesome guest to have a conversation with shortly. Before we do that, if you are new to the channel, read the disclaimer. This is just me sounding off. I'm not trying to give any financial advice. I don't hold any licenses to do that. So please do your own research. If you want to check out all of my videos, UKBitcoinMaster.com, BitcoinInterviews.com. Clearly, that's where you're going to find all the interviews that I've done to date. So do check those out as well. Let me get rid of that. Very, very quickly, shout out to some of my regulars in the chat. Good to see Vinny Rondo in the house. Good to see you, Vinny. Andy BTC. We got Whiskey Bravo. Mike is with us. Dave Shackelford. Bitcoin to the Moon coming in from Australia. Crikey, you should be asleep. Proud Zionist Jew. Yorkie Bitcoiner. John Gravitt. Matty 3623. My lovely wife Elaine is in the house. Who else have we got? Bugs, welcome Bugs, good to see you back. Chaz Old is with us. Matthew Underhill from the Bitcoin Book, good to see you, Matthew. Ian Waterhouse, Ian, good to see you, or Ian Waters House, I should get that one right. Good to see you back in the house. Johnny Midas coming in from the desert out in the US, good to see you as well. If you want to get my attention, people, type in UK Bitcoin Master. I'll gladly read out, or I'll see what you're saying. I've got the chat open. UK Bitcoin Farmer has joined us as well. Great to see you in the house. Very, very quickly, you know that I don't talk about price. What I talk about is if you've got a spare dollar lying around right now, it's going to get you just under 5,000 sats. Now, I remember several weeks ago, I was doing this show and you were going to get over 2,000 sats. And here we are. You know, the price of Bitcoin is down, which means the sats that you get for your dollar is up, people. So now, in my opinion, is an incredible time to buy Bitcoin. That's all I want to say about that. I want to quickly plug this event. If you're in the UK, not this weekend coming, the following weekend, the 2nd of July, I am going to be Master of Ceremonies down in the southwest corner of the UK in Bristol for the Bitcoin Adventure. A fantastic day out for under 20 quid. If you want to come and join us, you can see everything that's going on there. I've put that up on the screen. So if you want to mix with Bitcoiners, and, you know, I hear that the American guys all the time, Miami comes around, or, you know, unconfiscatable, or whatever it might be. And they say the real power is when you're actually holding a proper face-to-face conversation with a Bitcoiner, because most people around you, I just think you've gone to the planet Zog. So to be able to come down and mix with other Bitcoiners and also have a look at everything we got going on for the day, why wouldn't you want to do that? So if you can get down there, 2nd of July, come and join us in Bristol. Just Google the Bitcoin Adventure. You'll find all the details. There is a note at the top I will draw your attention to, and I've been missing this. And it says, please remember, Avon Valley is a cashless site. So bring your debit card, because you will not be able to use cash. Again, my good friend down in Australia, if you know a whale that will be happy to part with just under 11 BTC, he is selling an asset portfolio that includes Bitcoin to the moon.com, BTC to the moon.com, and a load of other stuff as well. And I'm sure if we could get to Sailor, knowing how he is with domain names, he'd probably scoop up bitcointothemoon.com. So if you know anyone, get this message out to them. If you're in the UK, or if you're not in the UK, please get behind Bitcoin Racing. They're a UK racing team. They got 4 cars. You can see them there. Bitcoin logos all over them. They've got the Bitcoin logo over their articulated truck. I think in America you call it a semi. They are sponsored by El Salvador. The El Salvadoran government have given them the copyright, whatever you call it, to put El Salvador's logo on the side. I believe Seb, one of their drivers, is from El Salvador as well. So you want to check them out, people. Firstly, follow them on Twitter. There you go, Bitcoin Racing, well worth following. Secondly, for 10 quid, you can do the El Hodl program. You can see what you get. For 230 quid, one-off payment, you can become a micro sponsor, have your Twitter handle printed on the cars and the support page, plus other membership benefits. That's where I've gone into the Satoshi supporters club, so give it some consideration. Again, there's a prospectus in my show notes because Daniel Prince is part of this organization, Princey. Also, they are looking for partnerships with people that, you know, want to take that a whole lot further. They're looking at getting into the Porsche Racing Club or whatever it is. I think that's 4 million TV viewers that watch that as well. So all I'm saying is it is worth checking out, people. Lastly, if you want to drop a few sats, there's 3 Lightning addresses. If you'd rather get rid of your crappy fiat, buymeacoffee.com down the bottom. You can make a donation if you want. Again, you know that I don't run this channel for any type of financial gain. I do it because I want to just try and inspire people to get in the Bitcoin rabbit hole, do their own research, and then get off of zero. But that leads me into my guest. And I'm so excited because I've been following this guy for several months, probably a year, and listening. Any pod he's on, I want to listen to it. Jeff Ross, you can see there, he calls himself the Pleb Counselor. Now, I want to do a proper intro here, so I've got some notes. Bear with me. So, Dr. Jeff Ross, MD, MBA, is the founder and managing director of Vailshire Capital Management LLC and Vailshire Partners LP. Vailshire is a Colorado-based investment advisor, or RIA, created by Jeff to grow and protect its clients' wealth via wise and innovative, I can never say that one, strategies using a full cycle macroeconomic approach. Jeff retired in 2021 from being a fellowship trained interventional radiologist and board certified diagnostic radiologist in the healthcare industry. Passionate about investing wisely and teaching others to do the same, Jeff is a former contributor for the Motley Fool and occasional contributor for Seeking Alpha. The hedge fund and individual Vailshire client portfolios enjoy the distinct advantage of benefiting from Jeff's expertise and knowledge of all things healthcare, Bitcoin, and technology related. Jeff, gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the Bullish Bitcoin channel.
Brian, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Well, and I'm really excited to have you in the house with me. So fantastic. Jeff, just bear with me. I'm just looking down to see if my wife is letting me know how this chat is doing, but she hasn't said anything. So people, if Jeff's quiet or loud, the problem with this is every guest I get on has got a different speaker set up. Some have got their volumes up loud, some are down, so I have to adjust it to make that work right. So my lovely lady is in the chat, and hopefully I'll watch a message pop up in a moment to say everything's okay. So Jeff, thank you for joining me. What I want to do really, I take a 3-pronged attack to chat. I don't even call it interviewing, but holding a Bitcoin conversation with my guests, and that is really before, finding Bitcoin, and after, to simplify the whole thing. So I guess if it's okay with you, we can clearly see that, you know, you're Dr. Ross. So maybe you want to give us a little bit of an insight into your background prior to finding Bitcoin, the medical profession that you went in, why you went that route. The floor's yours, my friend.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction, by the way. So I guess for me, the story goes all the way back to when I went to college and to university. I had to decide back then. So just so y'all know, I'm 47 years old. So this is back in the early 1990s. I needed to decide, do I want to be a professional investor and go down the kind of the finance route, or do I want to become a doctor? So after hemming and hawing about the decision for a bit, I decided to go to become a doctor. So I went down in the U.S. we have this pre-medical thing you follow, and then 4 years of medical school, and then I had 6 years of residency and fellowship to become a physician, become a radiologist, and something called an interventional radiologist. After all my training was done, it was the year 2008, and my family, my wife, and young kids at the time moved to Colorado, and I began private practice as a physician. Probably about a year later, I finally had time again because I was used to working about 80 to 90 hours a week and being on call every
Yeah.
third night for the last part of my training, which was really really busy. And by that point, I had a little more free time, so I remembered that I loved investing, and I got to kind of get back into that again. So within about a year, I started a blog just teaching people how to invest wisely on their own. I've always kind of had a passion for it, have always been pretty good at it. And so I just wanted to teach people to do that. So it started as that little hobby. Within maybe a year or so, I got picked up by the Motley Fool, and I became an analyst for them, and started writing some basically stock picking advisory kind of articles. And then I started writing for Seeking Alpha as well. By that point, we're probably looking at 2011, 2012. I had a pretty good following of people who said, "Hey, I really like your style. Could you manage my money?" And I said, "Oh no, I'm just a doctor. I just do this for fun. This is kind of my side hobby."
Yeah.
And so, but it planted a seed in my brain. I thought, wow, I've always loved this. Like, what if I could do this as a profession? I'd probably be the happiest guy in the world.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of research and just discovered that probably what would make me the most happy as an investor, the best way to bring people along with me would actually be to start a small hedge fund.
Yep.
Because basically what a hedge fund is just people pool money together, and there's a manager like me, a general manager, who basically takes it over as the general partner, makes all the investment decisions, and I try to generate as much alpha, generate profits for my clients as much as possible.
Yep.
And then so I founded Vailshire in 2013. I opened the hedge fund in January of 2014. Literally had 0 clients. The only money I had was I had saved up $120,000 of my own money from working as a physician. I put that in the hedge fund, and I just turned the sign around and said, "Okay, from closed to open, let's do this." And I and I went probably, I want to say I went 8 months or more before I even had one client. I was just kind of doing it myself and starting to talk to people about it. I'm just so people know right up front, I'm a terrible salesman. Like, I'm really authentic, but I'm a terrible salesman. And so I will never try to sell anybody on my product or anything. I try to let the results speak for themselves. And if people want to jump along and join me, that's great. So that's always been kind of my philosophy. Later in the year in 2014, I realized that a hedge fund is great, but because of the minimums that are required in the SEC rules, I basically am excluding 95% or more of my friends and family members because the minimums are just too high.
Yep.
And so I decided to start a registered investment advisory as well. I had created that initially, but so I started doing separately managed accounts where I manage people's retirement savings and brokerage accounts and things like that. Those have much lower minimums, and it made it so that my audience was much larger. My customer base basically was much larger at that point. That's when Vailshire kind of started to take off and grow. And so that's 2014. Fast forward a few years, Vailshire it was starting to grow and to become big enough so that by 2015, kind of towards the middle to end of 2015, it was a little too much for me to be on call every fourth night as a physician and manage Vailshire also.
I was going to say,
And
what was the transition like? There must have been a point where you were thinking, "Oh, crikey, I can't juggle both these."
Exactly. And the funny thing about what I did as a physician, and most people don't understand the difference, but I was a diagnostic radiologist on the one hand. That's the guy who, if you go get an ultrasound or a CAT scan or MRI or an X-ray at the hospital, I'm the doctor that would read those scans and put a report onto it
Yep.
and make a diagnosis, basically. But on the other hand, I was also an interventional radiologist. That's almost a completely different field where it's almost like the surgery side of radiology. So I did image guided, minimally invasive surgeries. I would put stents in people and catheters in people. And if people needed a port for chemotherapy, I was the guy that implanted a port in the person.
Yep.
Lots of cool stuff I used to do as an interventional radiologist. But so it was kind of like I already had those two careers. And then on a third career, work in Vailshire, managing Vailshire. So what I decided in 2015 is I actually gave up doing interventional radiology, so the patient care side of radiology, because that would eliminate the being on call every fourth night,
Yep.
and I would just have a lot more free time in that way. So I did that all the way up until, well, hold on, I'll take a little, I digress a little bit. In 2017, from 2017 to 2019, I went to school again and got my MBA in finance, just to kind of put that under my belt a little bit. I don't really know why I did it, other than I enjoyed the learning.
Hold on.
And
Hold on. So, doctor, hedge fund, and school?
yeah,
Carry on.
I'm a glutton for punishment. And actually, I just Pomp asked me about this yesterday, and I feel like I just have always, I'm an ideas guy, and if I see something I want, I really go after it hard. That's just how I've always been
Yeah.
wired.
Yeah.
And whether I should do it or not, I don't care. If I'm passionate about something, I'm going to go at it 100% until I
Yeah.
get it done.
Get it.
So that's what I did. So I got that done, and then fast forward a couple more years. By the end of 2021, Vailshire had grown big enough and had become kind of successful enough as far as getting a client base, and it was established enough that I could support my family without having medicine on the side. So even though I enjoyed being a doctor very much, I hung up my doctor belt in the fall of 2021, hung up my stethoscope per se, and decided to just go full time into Vailshire, and actually full time into Bitcoin education as well. So that's what I've been doing since the fall of 2021.
Okay, so when you started Vailshire, how many years do you feel it was before Bitcoin came on the radar, or was it always on the radar?
Okay, so let's talk about this. So unrelated to Vailshire, I discovered cryptos, the whole crypto world, back in about 2016. So I
Okay.
actually I tweeted today, I'm a recovering altcoiner, or a reformed altcoiner. So back in
Talk to my audience.
2016,
Talk to my audience.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to tell people this is part of what I teach people, because I want people to learn from my mistakes. So I first got into Bitcoin back when it was dirt cheap. So back then, when I first was buying Bitcoin, it was kind of in the $300 to $600 range, and I was a pretty wealthy doctor at the point. So I'm like, well, I'm going to buy this stuff. It sounds kind of cool. I didn't really understand it at that point. And if you remember back in those days, the exchanges, if you wanted to buy other crypto, it was all paired with Bitcoin. So you had to
Yep.
sell
Yep.
Bitcoin to buy, Ethereum, to buy
Yep.
Litecoin, to buy
Yep.
Bitcoin Cash, whatever, crypto you wanted to get. So, and then if you remember 2017, the parabolic rise higher, Bitcoin did great, but these cryptos did even better, right? If Bitcoin went up, 10 to 50x, these cryptos went up 100 to 500x. They were just
And the
incredible. You could
ICO
throw it.
craze as well. Yeah.
The ICO craze, right? You could throw a dart literally blindfolded and hit any crypto you wanted to, and it would probably go up 100x. So that was the atmosphere back then. It was one of those deals where you kind of couldn't lose. This, by the way, I like to always make sure people understand this, had nothing to do with Vailshire. I wasn't doing this for my clients or anything. This was me on the side trying to figure out this whole world. By the end of 2017, going into 2018, I had sold all of my Bitcoin for a nice little profit to buy all of these cryptos, which then, if you remember, beginning of 2018, proceeded to crash, and crashed very hard, but about 90 to 99%, depending on what crypto we're talking about, the crypto winter, right, in 2018. So 2018 tax time came around, and I had a huge tax bill for the profits I had made in 2017.
Yep.
I had, and all of my crypto was now worth almost zero. It was worth, I don't know, a few $1,000s or something, or a few $100s, compared to where it had been, 95% lower than it was, and I had no Bitcoin. And so that's how that's how I was in about the middle of 2018. And I was like, well, that was really stupid. And what was that? And is this stuff even for real? In my defense, I didn't understand Bitcoin. I was not a part of, any kind of Bitcoin community like I am now on Twitter. I didn't know people who were into Bitcoin. I had no idea which would win as the next digital world reserve currency. I thought, well, maybe it will be Litecoin. Maybe it will be Bitcoin Cash.
Yep.
Maybe it's good that the block size is bigger. I don't know. And so I was just kind of stupid, and I was sort of in there for the speculation of it, not because I understood what I was doing. Fast forward a little bit, early 2019, I kept, the Bitcoin kept tugging at my brain, and I kept thinking about it. What did it for me and finally pushed me down the rabbit hole was reading Saifedean's book, right? The Bitcoin Standard. For me, that's what kind of brought it all together finally, is I thought, oh, it's an evolution of simply better money. We're sort of at the apex of monetary creation. The best we could do before Bitcoin was gold, and then it became banknotes attached to gold because they were better medium of exchange. They were more transportable, things like that. They were more divisible. Um, that was the best we could do in the analog age.
Yep.
Along came the digital age, and suddenly we could take all of the properties that we loved about gold and about cash itself, and combine that all into one entity called Bitcoin. You can have your perfect base layer, which is a perfect store of value, decentralized, totally secure, apolitical, all of those things, perfect money for the world. And then you can build layers on top of it to make it a better medium of exchange. That's what the Lightning Network does for us, all those kind of things. So all of that came together for me back in 2019. That's when I started teaching my Vailshire clients about Bitcoin. I'm like, okay, I finally get it. I'm going to start teaching people now. So then in my Vailshire client accounts, we went from no Bitcoin ownership to a 1% Bitcoin ownership. From 1, we went to 2. And then from 2, we kind of went up to about 5%. I had a lot of clients initially who were not in favor of it. They didn't trust it. They read the headlines that said, oh, Bitcoin is for criminals. My favorite politician doesn't like it. It wastes too much energy, blah, blah, blah. All of the
That's the
FUD
question
that.
I was going to ask you. How did the clients react to it? It
Exactly, yeah.
had to
So
be a
they
mixed reaction.
mixed at best, and most of them were, basically not into it at first. But the interesting thing is, what I had then was a small client base of clients who were pro Bitcoin and who allowed me who did not. And so what I then was able to do is I could show my clients, a year or 2 years later, we're now into like mid 2020, late 2020. Here's what a portfolio looks like with 5% Bitcoin in it and all of the exact same holdings that you have. Here's what a portfolio looks like that has, all of the holdings with no Bitcoin. And obviously the results were much better. And we could see that it actually didn't add to the volatility necessarily of the portfolio because there wasn't a tight correlation with Bitcoin and stocks at that point. The returns were much better. And so kind of one by one, I think won over the majority of my clients. Now, basically almost all of our clients are in Bitcoin to some extent. And then the ones who are really into it, who have been orange pilled, I teach them how to buy Bitcoin on your own. You don't need me for that. So you can, you can go on this exchange, you can buy it for cheap, you can put it over onto your cold storage device. And to me, that's a victory. If we've orange pilled somebody so that they are kind of taking control of their own finances, they understand Bitcoin, they're putting it in cold storage, so they're self-sovereign. That's a victory, and I'm super happy.
Well, exactly the same as me. And I say, not your keys, not your coins. I'm a firm believer in that mantra. I think we need to push it really, really hard, more and more and more. What else was I going to say? Have you had to go into any type of, let's call it education with your clients, with everything that's going on right now, the turbulence right now? Or did you do that when you started talking to your clients about Bitcoin and the fact that it is volatile, maybe draw some parallels to some other stocks or NASDAQ or whatever all that stuff is that is also volatile? Did you need to do any of that? Have you had to do any of that in this last, turbulent year? How's that looked? Have any of them got not cold feet as such, but nervous?
So interestingly, I have been very bearish from a macro standpoint. In fact, I've earned the moniker on Twitter, Dr. Bear. A lot of
Yep.
people affectionately call me that. I come into rooms and I've been telling them to be careful about what's coming since all the way back in January.
Yep.
And in January, I said, it's pretty rough right now, but you know what? We haven't even hit the rough patch yet. So buckle up for what's coming.
Say that.
And so, yeah, so then we get to, April and May, and I said, okay, now we're hitting the rough patch. This is where things get ugly. So I've been preparing my clients for that as well. They know that I've been getting very cautious in our portfolios. We had been owning things like Bitcoin miners, and kind of similar Bitcoin proxy type things, MicroStrategy, Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, those sort of things. And we hit our stop losses on a lot of those things. And we've been sort of sitting on the sidelines with the Bitcoin proxies.
Yep.
Because the way my system works is we used kind of a momentum based strategy. Where if something goes into a bearish trend where it's clearly bearish, we avoid it. We either avoid it, or if we're in an aggressive fund, actually short things that are in a bearish trend. So we're shorting the stock market right now, and we're actually shorting Bitcoin miners and crypto exchanges right now. And in my hedge fund, we're doing that to hedge against my long Bitcoin position. So I have a core allocation to Bitcoin. it's still very bearish, right? It's been a rough whatever 7-8 months so far for the price of Bitcoin, but these prices are extremely cheap right now, and I can't pass that up. So what I do, the way I do this as a hedge fund manager, is I'm buying cheap Bitcoin. I'm increasing my core allocation, but at the same time I'm hedging against it by shorting these Bitcoin miners and crypto exchanges and things like that. One of my favorite things to do when I tell people, because I just kind of fundamentally don't feel right about shorting Bitcoin, and I never will, I tell people, if you have the desire, or if you think that Bitcoin is going to go lower in price in the near term, then short Ethereum. You can short the Grayscale Ethereum trust, and to me, that's a fantastic idea because Ethereum is more volatile than Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin goes down, Ethereum goes down even more. That makes it a great short and a great hedge against a core Bitcoin position.
Which is all fine and dandy and well and good and fantastic, and you know what you're doing, but compare that to me on the other side, a regular guy, working class guy. All I've done is amass some Bitcoin. And for me, and I was having a chat with my nephew today, who I orange pilled about 7 or 8 months ago, and he's in the chat. And it was very much maybe, it's a simplistic view, and maybe you could make more money by shorting and playing around than that. But for me, it's buy, hold, enjoy life. I'm 63 now, and it's like I was 47 once. And all of a sudden you blink and it like, where did it go? So for me, I just want to buy it and hold it. I don't want to sit up all night looking at charts and what's going on with trades and everything else. So I know we hear this all the time, Jeff, just buy and hold Bitcoin. Obviously you're being a hedge fund, you're doing much more intricate things, but is it okay for someone, let's say me, to just buy and hold and accumulate more if you can, or just buy and hold and let it do what it's going to do? My time frame is I've been holding for 5 years, never sold a sat. I'll hold for at least another 5 years, and I'm then maybe hoping that the innovation, the financial instruments will be there to borrow safely against my Bitcoin and never touch the principal, because I want this as generational wealth for my family when I'm no longer here. So buying and holding, does that still stand true? I know what you're going to say, but I want my audience to hear this. Now, people say to me, well, it's okay for you. You got in 2017. Bitcoin was 2000. Well, you can't, the argument's gone now, because you can't turn around and say, well, it's 69,000, you bought a two, because we're back down now under 20. I haven't looked at what we are, just a fraction, couple $100 over 20,000. So there can't be any excuse, surely, to buy dollar cost average, hold for 5 years, and potentially be in the same boat as I am. Yes, no?
So I think you're doing it exactly right. The only reason I do what I do is because when you are a money manager like I am, my clients don't want to see huge losses. They don't want to see, their portfolio down 50% or 60%, because anybody can do that, right? They can buy and hold and lose 50% on their own. They don't need me to do that for them.
Yep.
So my goal is to generate profits if possible, or generate alpha, beat the market regardless of the current market conditions. So whether we're in a bear market or a bull market, I'm trying to generate alpha for my clients.
Yep.
That is not a great strategy for the normal person, though. And I will tell you that this is what I do as a Vailshire fund manager. But so let's take that hat off and go to the other me. So the personal me, right?
Yep.
What do I do? All I do is dollar cost average into Bitcoin. I never sell like you. I don't, since 2017, when I sold all of my Bitcoin, sadly, for altcoins.
I wonder if I bought it.
You probably did. Lesson learned, right? And so I learned a lot from that. And I started buying again kind of in late 2018 again, and then bought in earnest in 2019.
Yep.
And have been buying ever since. So I tell people, especially in conditions like this, I'm telling you guys, dollar cost averaging is literally made for times like these. People all the time ask me, like, are we at the bottom? Have we bottomed yet? I'm holding, I'm sitting in cash waiting for the bottom because I want to time it. And I tell people it's literally impossible, other than guessing, when we're going to actually hit the bottom. You don't know that we've bottomed until you can look back and see the bottom. Like, oh, I guess that was a bottom there. So
None
was
of us
this
have got
recent,
a crystal ball, have we? No one.
Right. Right. And so when you have a volatile a regime, and we have these low prices, what I counsel people to do is quit trying to time tops and bottoms in markets, and especially in Bitcoin. Rather, learn to recognize value. Learn when something is expensive versus when something is cheap.
Yeah.
Right now, based on all of the metrics that I follow, Bitcoin is very, very cheap. It is super inexpensive. So you can't go wrong if you have a long-term time horizon. And normally I say you should have at least 10 years when you're investing in Bitcoin. Think of it like a retirement account. And don't even look at the price or care about the price or concern yourself with the price for 10 years. Just
Yep.
start buying a regular amount every day or every week or every month or whatever your cadence is. And then in 10 years, you'll be very, very pleasantly surprised at how well it has done. I can practically guarantee it. I can't 100%, but 99.9% guarantee you'll be very happy with the outcome. And so what you're doing, Brian, is awesome. Dollar cost average. Don't worry about the price. Bitcoin is super cheap right now. At some point, we're going to get through. I think we're definitely in, or at least on the cusp of a global recession right now, basically for all of the Western world. It may get uglier. The price may go lower. It doesn't matter because it is super cheap from a long-term perspective. So if
Yeah.
you're just regularly buying right now, you are buying very cheap Bitcoin, and in the long run, you will do extremely well.
Well, at the end of the day, coming from the sort of mindset that I have and not financial, I say to people, if you look at my initial investment, I mean, I bought in May, so I believe it's about $2,050 per coin in May 2017. And even with it down right now, almost at a low, if you work on 20K, I've still 10x'd my money in 5 years. And I defy anyone, unless you have got your type of background or financial background, to 10x their money, leaving it sat in a bank or putting it into, a pension fund. And crikey, it doesn't take the brains of a rocket scientist to know that pension funds are not going to deliver. You've only got to look at the amount of people born between 1946 and 64, the baby boomers, 1 billion, I think a seventh of the world, are now retirement age or getting that way, or the Buffetts are older, obviously, and of course there's less and less people paying in at the bottom. So there's this demographic shift that I see that is leading us towards, I don't know what the right word is, but it's a really, really scary time. And I'm worried for those people that are putting money into a pension that are going to rely on that to enjoy their retirement, their old age. I just think we're moving to a world, Jeff, where, it will be expected that you just work until you die. So I just see Bitcoin as the most incredible play. Incredible. Yes, it's volatile, but, give me something else that's as volatile, if not more volatile. I've heard several podcasters talk about it, but, I guess what I'm saying is talk to the audience about Bitcoin. If you run it alongside anything else out there that, people say, oh, I don't want to get in Bitcoin, it's too volatile. Well, name something else that's also pretty volatile coming from a financial background.
Sure. So there's lots of volatility out there. First of all, crypto itself is it's exceedingly volatile. Except the downside of crypto, I liken Bitcoin to the sun, right? It's this flaming ball of nuclear fusion going on, and then there's crypto, which I liken to a match. You strike a match, it lights up, gets white hot for a little bit, and then it flames out, goes down to zero, and that's what these cryptos do. Yes, there's 19,000 of them. There are probably going to be 100,000 of them someday. I don't think the crypto space is going to go away. Each individual unit, though, is going to go to zero, I think, because they basically have no intrinsic value relative to Bitcoin. They're basically, I look at crypto as being basically venture capital that's awkwardly glued to a blockchain and focused on an exit strategy.
Yeah.
They're just trying to make money really quickly and then get it out before somebody catches them. It's sort of how I look at most of it. I know I'll get flack for that. But what else is volatile? Tech stocks, small cap tech stocks are highly volatile. But if you catch a secular move in tech stocks, so basically a long-term bullish move in the way that the world is changing, one kind of obvious one to me is the transition into electric vehicles. Love or hate Tesla. Tesla is doing things right as far as what people want. The valuations have been insane. I come from a value investing background. There's never been a good time from a valuation perspective to own Tesla, but it's been one of the best performing stocks over the last decade. It's just undeniable. The reason being is because they're right at the cusp. They're on the leading edge of a secular shift, a paradigm shift in the way things are done, and they're doing it right. So when you can catch those kind of things, those kind of stocks are super volatile, but they're also very rewarding. And so what I tell people to focus on more, instead of just being turned off by the volatility, look at something called the Sharpe ratio. The Sharpe ratio is the risk adjusted returns. And another way of saying that is volatility adjusted returns. So even though something is volatile, does it have more upside volatility than downside volatility?
Yeah.
That is the incredible thing about Bitcoin, is it, even though it's very volatile, most of the volatility historically is to the upside. And so you want to own Bitcoin for as long as possible, because if you can catch that upside volatility, you can make life-changing gains. In fact, that's another thing I like to say a lot. Volatility is the price you pay for making life-changing gains, and that's with Bitcoin. So you have to be okay with that. And I tell people, instead of even just being okay with that, take advantage of it. So when it's volatile, when it's going down, when people are panicking because there's huge red candles on your screen and Bitcoin is down $5,000 today or whatever it is, or maybe it hits a new all-time low from over the last not all-time, but a 1 year low or something like that. That's when you want to be buying. You want to take advantage of the times when people are scared. You want to be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. That applies to Bitcoin more than any other asset. So take advantage of volatility. Realize that you can actually make life-changing gains if you have the patience and the fortitude to hold on to it for the long haul.
Yeah, brilliant. I liken it to, when the house is burning down, everyone's running away. You want to be running into the house. Blood in the streets is where fortunes are made.
Yep.
I don't like the way Warren Buffett craps on Bitcoin all the time. But that said, his philosophy of, you should be scooping everything up when there's blood in the streets, is a good philosophy. It makes total sense to me, because that's where fortunes are made, because everyone's dumping, everyone's scared. They're creating this cascade downwards. If you go up and you mop that up, it's only going to be down for so long and it's going to bounce back again. So I sort of get that. Excuse me. I've got someone in the chat asking, Brian, could you ask Jeff if he thinks ETH is a poop coin?
Short answer,
used the
yes.
word poop because I don't swear on my channel. So he's been very polite.
Yeah, me neither. I'm not into cussing really, so that's
me
great.
neither. Yeah.
That's why I say altcoins all the time. I'm being respectful of it. So yes. So Ethereum to me is clearly an unregistered security based on what the SEC definition of an unregistered security is. It had sort of good intentions early on of being this multifunctional blockchain platform for people to use. What should have happened is Vitalik should have started developing layer 2 on Bitcoin instead of developing his own blockchain with Ethereum. The problem with Ethereum is, first of all, it has nothing to do with Bitcoin. I like to make that clear from the get-go. It actually bothers me personally. I get offended by this when I see people comparing Bitcoin and ETH as though there's anything to compare. There's not. Bitcoin is just simply better money. It's super simple tech. I mean, it's brilliant tech, but it's simple. It was like creating the wheel. Once you created the wheel, you didn't need to go any further. We figured it out. That's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
This is good as it gets for money with Bitcoin, and it's so much better than anything the world has ever seen before. Ethereum is basically a multifunctional platform that tries to be a jack of all trades and therefore is kind of a master of none. The more things it tries to do, the more capabilities you can do on the on the Ethereum blockchain. The clunkier it gets, the more expensive it gets, the slower it gets.
More things
they have
to break.
to switch it over, and exactly, it's going to break. It's less secure. It's more centralized. It's basically run by Vitalik, right? He's the king of Ethereum. Everybody knows that, even though they talk about it being decentralized. It's not decentralized. Vitalik could snap his fingers and change the protocol today if he wanted to into something else. The other thing about Ethereum, and again, I'm a guy who has held Ethereum because I owned it from way back in 2017. I sell it all when I can, and I'm almost completely sold out of my Ethereum, and I'm thankful for that. And I'll be down to 0 Ethereum at some point. I don't care if it gains, because I don't care. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin in my mind. And to me, Bitcoin is sort of the world-changing technology that's going to make the world a better place. So I'm not even trying to come down on Ethereum. The other thing, by the way, is there's basically no moat. So it has first mover advantage, which is a huge deal and has propelled it to amazing heights so far.
Yeah.
It has a ton of other base layer chains that do exactly what Ethereum does, but they're more efficient, they're cheaper, they're better tech. And so if you want to tech about technology, that's coming after Ethereum, and that's going to be the Ethereum killer. It has no protective moat. It's going to go down at some point. I think Ethereum is going to go to 0 Bitcoin at some point. It may take a while to get there, but these other chains they're bigger, faster, better, stronger than Ethereum. They'll eventually win out. So if I were just an Ethereum holder and I had a huge stash of Ethereum, I say congrats on your good success so far to date. If you want to speculate in that stuff, that's great. It's a free world. Do what you want. If you want to gamble, speculate, go for it. But please save in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is sound money. Ethereum is not sound money. It's certainly not ultrasound money. So don't buy into those kind of marketing schemes. I just think getting away from it completely is probably the wisest choice. But I'm a little biased.
Well, again, coming from a normie perspective, trying to get my head around your SEC and what coins they're going after, it almost sickens me that Gary Gensler is allowing Ethereum to creep into the same bucket as Bitcoin. Because when you look at the videos that are out there on Twitter, where Vitalik is saying, take investment and there's a 20x return or whatever it is. Isn't that, what am I trying to say? Isn't that what brings it under SEC as a security? If you're offering potential gains, am I right or am I wrong?
Well, I agree with you. And I think Gary Gensler also does, but they're sort of giving Ethereum a free pass.
I reckon there's a
Maybe
backhander
because it's
going
been
on,
around
Jeff.
for a while.
Sorry.
I think to me, it's sort of shady political business that goes
Me
on
too.
all the time. Like,
Yeah,
who
me
paid
too.
off who to get to this conclusion? Even the most recent bill that was proposed, the proposal by Cynthia Lummis and Gillibrand in the U.S. It's
Yeah,
not
that had
passed or
Ethereum in
anything.
it, didn't it? Yeah.
That had Ethereum. It was talking about
Yeah.
them like they're the same thing. I'm like, that is just pure ludicrousness. It's just crazy that people are lumping those two together as though they're the same thing. To me, based on the definitions of things and how I understand it, Ethereum is clearly a security,
Me
and
too.
Bitcoin is clearly not. So it is what it is. If it passes, it passes. You got to take the good with the bad. But I don't fight against crypto. I fight for Bitcoin. That's just sort of how I'm wired. There are a lot of people who fight. A lot of people who like to fight against it, and that's just not my mentality. So in the end, Bitcoin will win. I don't really care about the other cryptos, I guess, is the best way to put it.
I think for me, it is purely the amount of podcasts that I've been on and listened to people like yourself, Preston, Jeff, Greg, those types of people that have got me to where I am and my understanding. And my understanding is Bitcoin is such a simple asset. Okay, if you understand its network effects, if you understand all of the uniqueness without reeling them all off and the mutability and all that stuff, if you get that, you get how Bitcoin is probably, in my opinion, it's just an opinion, the one shot that humanity has got of making a fairer, better world for all and a better money. That's how I see it. Somebody might, come back at me and say, why and how? I can't tell you how and why. I've just learned from some really great people that you've got to be careful when I say I trust. They seem like they're educated. Bitcoiners, there's no, I don't see any ulterior motive. There's no narrative. There's no spin. They just call it out as it is. And I don't see anything better than the Bitcoin. Yeah, sure, it gets toxic. But for me, I believe that the winner will stand head and shoulders without trying to dump on the others. I just say to people, hey, your choice. You want to go and play around in crypto, go and play around in crypto. I'm a Bitcoiner. In fact, when I first bought Bitcoin, I bought 7 Ethereum. And I sat on them for a while. They were 200 quid a coin. And I sat on them for a year or two. And in the end, I just dumped them and turned it into Bitcoin. Because I learned quite quickly. So look, I'm very mindful of your time. I wanted to get into how you see. Let's get into the bearish side of Jeff. Okay, the bearish for Bitcoin and what drives that, because I get this macro, the world we're in. You've got Russia and Ukraine going on. There's talk of Taiwan and Iran and other things, and then we've of course got the inflation. We've just hit 9.1% here in the UK. That's just been announced. We've got everything going through the roof. They can't, I understand, but I don't know how to get it from here out of here. This dichotomy of when inflation's raging, they can't keep raising interest rates. I guess in a few minutes, try and simplify that down for the audience and why that might pull Bitcoin down with it, and what you feel then might happen with a rebound. I know what I believe will happen when it all rebounds and which one will come back like a coiled spring. I want my audience to hear it from you.
Sure. So the main issues is that the United States dollar is still the world's reserve currency. It's the US is still primarily the economic engine of the world.
Yep.
What goes in the US tends to go throughout the Western world and has ripple effects throughout the world. So I pay most attention to what's happening here in the US. GDP growth is negative, right? So economic indicators are all basically negative. Things that are to GDP, like consumer sentiment, is the consumer buying, or are they selling? What is their savings rate? Are they borrowing? All this kind of stuff. These kind of indicators are not only at lows, some of them are at all-time historic lows. Like they've never been lower. Like we're talking the depression level era. We're talking, the dot-com crash, the great financial crisis. All of these things, some of these indicators are actually lower than those levels right now. The valuations of equities were actually at peaks as high as 1929, as high as the dot-com area right before it crashed. Those are the levels that we're working with. So we're basically coming from this extreme high in valuations that the Fed basically blew up, right? It blew up this massive everything bubble in equities and in bonds. Well, and now they're like, oh crap, now inflation is super high. We need to do something, but they can't do something because they're backed into a corner. Normally what they would do is we'd be like, okay, everything is kind of crashing down. We need to start quantitative easing at this point, but they're stuck because, as you mentioned, inflation is so high. It's 9.1 in the UK, it's 8.6 in the US. That's extremely high, and it's making life extremely miserable when inflation
and it's
is
not even
high,
real, is
especially
it?
for the
That's
there's
not
not
even
even
a real
yeah, and
figure.
that's fake. Those are fake numbers. It's probably closer to 15 to 20%,
Yeah.
right? When you are in the lower echelons of income in a society, this stuff kills you. Like it is so hard to pay your bills when you're making minimum wage and your grocery bill just went up 40% and your utility bills is up 50% year over year, and healthcare is up and education is up and everything is more expensive. That makes people start feeling desperate and like, what am I going to do? This is crazy. Like I already work 2 jobs. Do I have to pick up a third job? How am I going to when will I sleep? How am I going to take care of my kids?
Yeah.
This is the kind of situation we're already in right now. And the Fed can't do anything about it right now because they can't. They're trying to fight inflation. But the problem is by quantitative tightening, you do not want to be tightening into a recession. And that's clearly what they're doing right now.
Yep.
So they basically have said the supply demand equation is out of balance, right? There's not enough supply for the amount of demand. Demand is too high. So instead of bringing the supply up, which would be a benefit to all of society, and free the supply chain issues, increase the supply of oil and gas, and do things whatever is required to get the supply balance up to meet the demand. Instead, what they're doing, I think a more socialist response, is they're saying let's bring demand of everything down.
Looks
How
like
do
it
they
to
do
me.
that? They raise interest rates. The US dollar is very strong right now, and the price of oil is very high. When you have those three things, that guarantees that we're going to go into a recession, and not just a mini recession. We're coming from such high valuations and all of these asset prices. We're going to have a severe recession. People keep tossing around the quote that he said earlier of a softish landing or a soft landing. There is no possible way. We are going to go into a very deep, painful recession before this is over. And that's what's going to be required to tackle inflation. So yes, they're probably at some point going to be able to bring inflation down what cost? They're going to destroy lives. They're going to destroy the wealth effect of the whole nation and honestly of the majority of the world. They're going to hurt businesses. They're going to do all that to bring down inflation by destroying demand. It is ugly out there. Now, you asked about the effects on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the world's freest market, it started sniffing out trouble under the hood all the way back in November of 2021. That's when it peaked and started coming down. And I'll be the first to admit, I was still optimistic at that point. I didn't see it yet in my indicators. I thought that this was going to be a rough year, but I think Bitcoin figured it out sooner that it's going to be a bad year. So it started its descent. I was hoping we were going to go parabolic to end 2021. We clearly didn't. I was wrong. So I finally flipped bearish in early January. Now, so a couple things about Bitcoin. People don't understand what Bitcoin is. I like to say Bitcoin is the world's safest safe haven asset. It's the greatest store of value that's ever been conceived by mankind. It is where people should flock to. It should be what's considered a risk-off asset. Right now, the world's premier risk-off asset is the US dollar. When they're freaking out, when people are scared of what's coming, they flock into the dollar because they're selling their other stuff. They sell their stocks, they sell their bonds, they sell their commodities, they sell real estate, and they hold the dollar. That causes the dollar strength to go up, the value of the dollar. You can look at the Dixie, DXY. So that's the US dollar strength relative to other currencies. That's been going very high, and I think it's going to go higher before this is over. What happens then to Bitcoin? Most people still don't understand Bitcoin. They think of it as a small tech stock, or they think of it as a crypto, which drives me nuts, by the way. They don't understand that it's better money. People should be flocking to Bitcoin as a safe haven asset, but instead they treat it like a little tech stock right now. So that's why it has such high correlation with stocks right now, especially with tech stocks. It's almost 1-to-1 with small tech stocks is when it moves up. When small tech stocks go up, Bitcoin goes up. When small tech stocks go down, Bitcoin goes down. Negative or an inverse correlation with the US dollar as well. So when the dollar strengthens, Bitcoin goes down and vice versa. At some point, I think possibly in the second half of this year, I think Bitcoin will decouple from that again, because historically Bitcoin actually has been an uncorrelated asset. And as more people understand, as the education gets out, and what we really need to do is educate the Wall Streeters. It's the Wall Streeters who came in from 2018 through 2022. They're the ones that are forcing the price action a lot. They're the ones who think of it like a little tech stock and don't understand that it's actually just better money. So as we can educate, I get on all the time trying to educate people about what it is and what it isn't. And so we just need to continue to teach people what Bitcoin is. And at some point, I think it actually will start to decouple. I would look to Bitcoin as the canary in the coal mine. Like it was the first asset to discover there was trouble under the hood way back in November of 2021. I think it will be the first to bottom and to start to rise again when we're getting sort of towards the end of this recession in these tough times. But in the meantime, I just want to caution people, I'm very bullish on the price of Bitcoin. I think it's extremely inexpensive right now. I'm personally buying a lot. In fact, I've doubled my dollar cost averaging into it to try to buy more while it's cheap. That's what I think people should do. Again, not individual investment advice, but that's just what I'm doing. So it could go lower, but it's very cheap historically right now. And at some point it's going to bottom, and then it's going to be the first to lead us out of this recession and to kind of signal that the Fed is going to switch from tightening to flat to back to quantitative easing. And my last point is that QE4 is coming for sure. I think QE infinity is just a fact of life, and that will go on until the dollar dies. But QE4, I think, will dwarf QE1, 2, and 3 combined. It's going to be massive, and we're going to have just another incredible, unbelievable asset bubble, and Bitcoin will benefit dramatically from that.
I think you're absolutely right, because if they don't, there's just going to be civil unrest. People just, the masses can't afford to pay their bills. And you know what they say, when there's no food on the shelves, when people can't afford to feed their family, they take to the streets. And, I'm worried about that. And I think they are. Of course, without getting into that, I'm looking at the time. We've also got what is called your midterms coming up. So, of course, they're going to want to look pretty for that. I'm going to switch quickly. We've got way more people watching than have hit that like button. People, please hit that like button so more regular noobs that are Googling Bitcoin can find channels like this so that they and not overwhelmed at the first hurdle. So hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. There's somebody in the chat. Now, normally I ask them to type UK Bitcoin Master so I can see it, but so I'm going to read it on my phone if I can. BTC Study Shift said, Dr. Ross, if you had to send an interview of yourself that would be considered a high-level conversation that would orange pill someone from the healthcare industry, apart from this interview, what would it be? Are there
That's
any that
funny.
stand out that you've done that you thought that could really be a useful educational tool?
Well, an interview that I actually didn't really love, but I think would be helpful for people in the healthcare industry is I was actually interviewed by Dr. James Dahl, who runs the White Coat Investor. It's WCI. It's called the WCI podcast, I believe. He very reluctantly interviewed me only because lots of people recommended me to him. He's very anti-Bitcoin and he hates hedge fund managers, and so he just like loathed interviewing me, which I thought was really funny. But because so many people had requested it, he did it anyways. So he kind of came out firing against me, like, what about this? What about this? You know, what about it wastes energy? What about it's a terrible tech? And what about its volatility? You know, all the things that the naysayers have against Bitcoin. He asked me all of those questions. So I had less fun with that interview because I don't like being confrontational, and he was kind of confrontational with me. But I would recommend, if people wanted to see that, if they have questions, and especially if they're in healthcare, you have two healthcare providers talking about it from both sides of the issue. One who's pro Bitcoin, me, and one who is anti Bitcoin, him. And I thought we had a pretty solid interview. So go check that interview out. That was probably a month or two ago.
I was going to say, if when the show's over, if you get a second and you can find the link to it, DM it to me and I'll add it into my show
Sure.
notes. And then people
Sounds good.
can go and find it, because I'd be very interested to listen to that as well. Because, you know, sometimes I think it's good, whilst it's uncomfortable, sometimes it's good if somebody can bat those questions at you, but you, whoever you are, you've got sensible answers that are not trying to, you know, skate around it and you don't know how to get around it. You're not squirming. You know, if somebody asks you something and you answer it, that impresses people more than somebody backpedaling or flicking their nose because they're trying to think of a lie. So, yeah, I'd be very interested to listen to that. One quick question before we pull it all together, Jeff, if I may. I always ask this question. You know, ultimately there is going to be a crossover. I believe we're trying to get people on the ark. Let's just use that terminology. There's different arguments, different points of view on whether that's going to be messy given the climate we're in right now. You know, we all want it to be a peaceful transition. You know, if it all collapses too soon, Bitcoin's not ready for that transition. Your thoughts around that?
I agree with all of that. I mean, I obviously want it to be a peaceful transition. I do think that this is going to be an extremely tumultuous decade, and I think we're just starting to see that. So it's been ugly so far. I don't think we're through it at all yet. I think there is much more ugliness to come. I think as the world transitioned from the US being the dominant world power to now it's on the decline right now, the rise of China is a real issue. I think that everything was going in China's favor until they basically banned Bitcoin and decided that it doesn't fit with their policy. Bitcoin is the dark horse in all of this, and I think it does give the world a chance to sort of reset itself on a new financial world order, one that is more peaceful. Why is it more peaceful? Because it incentivizes honesty. Everything that Bitcoin touches, it forces an honest unit of accounting onto it. So whether you're a business or a person or
Yeah.
a country even, Bitcoin forces you to be honest, and it incentivizes you to work hard and to show your proof of work by the Bitcoin that you're holding. That's very different from the current fiat world that we live in. The current fiat world, you win if you have the ear of the Federal Reserve, if you're a politician, if you can do kind of conniving behind people's back, if you get first access to the freshly printed dollars, things like that. You know, if you're a fund manager, if you can get the results before anybody else, do some insider trading, you're rewarded for that unless you get caught. And then usually if you get caught, you get a little slap in the hand, and then you can keep doing what you're doing before anyways, and become exceedingly successful. The new world order that the Bitcoin standard will bring about will be a much better world. It will bring about what I'm calling the age of legends. It's going to be lots of people doing wonderful, great, long lasting things for the world. I think of it more like the Renaissance age, you know, the Michelangelos of the world, building projects that bless the world for thousands of years after that. we're going to go to that world and get away from this cheap plastic things that break all the time, and short-term thinking, all of that kind of stuff. The fiat world is going to die out. It's not going to die out without a fight, though, and it's going to be an ugly transition. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to say I'm very excited for what's on the other side of this tumultuous decade, but it's going to be an ugly, tumultuous decade, I think, to get there. And I don't know if that means war or not. I hope it's peaceful. I hope it's non-kinetic war, but there will be some kind of war happening. Whether it's kinetic or not, it remains to be seen.
Well, thank you for all of that. I would say to anybody watching, the best thing you could ever do is learn. Just learn about what makes Bitcoin unique. Take the time to read or listen to whatever your bag, Saifedean's book, The Bitcoin Standard. For me, I went a stage further and I actually listened to 24 hours of G. Edward Griffin's Creature from Jekyll Island. And that was a massive, massive eye-opener for me. A lot of it was, but it was just crikey, because I didn't learn anything at school. I hated school. And all of a sudden I get into Bitcoin in my late 50s, early 60s, and all I want to do is learn about history. And I didn't want to do it at school, which is really odd and it's really bizarre. But to something you said at the top of the show, and that was, I wanted to do something I really, really enjoyed and I loved doing it. And I always say that when you find something you love doing, you'll never do another day's work in your life. Here we are, for me, 7 p.m. coming up to in the evening. Most people say, no, I don't want to work at 7 in the evening. I want to sit and watch Netflix. This is just not work. It is just the most fascinating, rewarding thing two people can do that allows many other people that find the channel to learn from. So, Jeff, I absolutely thank you for being my guest. Hand off where people can find you. Obviously, in the show notes, I've got the link to your Twitter. I know on Pumped Show, I watched that this morning, that you did give a website out. So hand off to the audience where they can find your work.
Sure. So if you want to learn more about how I manage money, if that interests you in any way, I do accept international clients, by the way. I manage, as you can probably tell, my client accounts very differently from standard financial planners and investment advisors. I manage their accounts more like a hedge fund, and I'm very Bitcoin focused as well. If you want to learn more about that, you can send me an email by just sending it to info@vailshire.com. You can also just check out my website, vailshire.com. And then, as Brian alluded to, I'm on Twitter all the time doing Twitter spaces and responding and tweeting things out. So feel free to find me there, and I'm happy to connect.
Jeff, I'm just going to pull the show together. I always leave with a quote, and I'll catch you on the other side. But I just want to bring my desktop up because I love quotes, people. I found this one. Keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground. In other words, stack sats and just stay humble is my top advice. Just keep stacking those sats, be humble, have empathy when you're talking to somebody about your idea, the Bitcoin idea. Understand maybe where you were when you first saw this and maybe you were skeptical. I remember our first phone call with our friend, an hour and 3/4, my lovely wife in the chat. Everything he said, she said why. She's an analyst. So she wanted to know why and what's in it for you, and, understand how you felt when somebody approached you about Bitcoin. So keep your eyes on the stars and your feet firmly on the ground. People, that is your UK Bitcoin Master live show, the Bullish Bitcoin channel, as it's now been rebranded for today, the 23rd of June 2022. Please like this, please retweet it, please subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit the bell button and click all, and you'll be notified. I go live every Monday and every Thursday at 1800 hours UK time. So come and join me for some Bitcoin inspiration. You can check out all my work through the bear market of 18 and 19, and I defy any one of you to come back to me and say you were bearish on that. I might have been bearish on the price, but I've been long-term bullish, as Jeff was referring to, and I'm still long-term bullish on where Bitcoin's going and how it's going to completely change the world. Whatever you're doing, people, have an incredible morning, afternoon, evening. Have a fantastic weekend. I'll be back on Monday, as always, 6 p.m. London. Until then, I'll leave you with my social media links. There's that link that'll also be there if you want to buy me a cup of coffee. You don't need to. I don't run the show for any type of financial gain, as I've already said. Jeff, I'll catch you on the other side. Everyone, I'll catch you all on Monday.